You know, I've been in office for 7 years. I'm in my fourth term. I have a record that speaks for itself. And for some people, I'm a rhino. For some people, I'm MAGA. I mean, I'm Kristin Robbins. I have a record to stand on, and I'm going to fight for Minnesota.
It's a brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Please hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. Just click subscribe. We'd love to have you download every episode. Today, there are a lot of gubernatorial races coming up across the country. And in Minnesota, our current governor has become rather famous. His name is Tim Walz. You may know of him. He was Kamala Harris's vice presidential nominee and maybe single-handedly ruined her chances. He hasn't decided if he's running again, but we have three very viable candidates on the Republican side who are campaigning. One is Kristin Robbins. She happens to be the only woman in the race. Kendall Qualls is another one. We will interview him later. Dr. Scott Jensen is a third. We will interview him later. Today is Kristin Robbins' turn. And she has been in the Minnesota legislature since 2018. She's got a very interesting background, and she is Minnesotan through and through, but her concerns are concerns that we have nationwide. Kristin Robbins, running for governor of Minnesota, is our guest next. Kristin, it's great to meet you. Wonderful to have you on. As I've said to people, I'm going to give this platform to you and Kendall Qualls and Scott Jensen, Dr. Jensen equally. You're our first. You just jumped into the race for Minnesota governor. What's prompted you to run?
You know, I got into this race because I love Minnesota. My husband and I were blessed to raise our three daughters here, and we have seen the state decline precipitously under Tim Walz. And we hear from our neighbors, our friends, everyone feels like Minnesota has really gone downhill. And I want to get into this race to turn Minnesota around, make it work for Minnesotans again.
It's interesting. I hear this a lot. Let's take back Minnesota. And it kind of echoes the call of taking back the country. A lot of people online, obviously on the other side, are going to attack you, and they're going to try to associate you with Trump. It's already happened. I've seen it online. And some people may not think that's a bad thing. But of course, it's the Democrats' only sort of defense right now is to go on offense and say, if you're associated with Trump, that's bad. How do you respond to that? Well, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You know, preseason football, you can take the gal out of football, but you can't take football out of the gal. And preseason football is underway. College football is also here. You don't want to miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. This is the most fun and easy way to enjoy the sports experience that fall is unique for. So this football season, I'm going to be watching a couple guys in the pros. Saquon Barkley, how does he follow up last year's amazing season? Same with Josh Allen following up an MVP season, and Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. What are they going to do? All of these things are interesting to me. And you know what? I said Prize Picks is simple to play. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. It's also the best way to get on action in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Prize Picks is the way to go, folks. It is so much fun and it is so easy. All you have to do is download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Michele, Michele, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's it. That's code Michele, Michele, note 1L in Michele, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. This is the way to enjoy the football season. Prize Picks, run your game. A lot of people online, obviously on the other side, are going to attack you, and they're going to try to associate you with Trump. It's already happened. I've seen it online. And some people may not think that's a bad thing. But of course, it's the Democrats' only sort of defense right now is to go on offense and say, if you're associated with Trump, that's bad. How do you respond to that?
You know, I've been in office for 7 years. I'm in my fourth term. I have a record that speaks for itself. And for some people, I'm a rhino. For some people, I'm MAGA. I mean, I'm Kristin Robbins. I have a record to stand on, and I'm going to fight for Minnesotans. So I'm happy to debate issues. I'm happy to talk about it. But I'm a Republican, unapologetically. I stand for limited government, pro-growth policies, supporting families, a freedom agenda so Minnesotans can live their lives and be successful. And I don't know if people want to categorize that in different ways. That's fine.
It's what happens. It's politics, right? And you are aware of it. As you said, you were first elected in 2018. You're now the assistant leader in the House, correct?
Yes.
What is you talk about the issues and the record to stand on. What are you most proud of that you've accomplished since 2018?
You know, the most important work I've done has been in the last session when I became chair of the fraud committee. Minnesota has an epidemic of fraud. Under Tim Walz, we are looking at north of $1 billion of our tax dollars being stolen and ripped away from vulnerable citizens who actually need help. So my work on the fraud committee continues, even though we're not in session. We're having our next meeting September 17th, and I am just committed to rooting out the fraud and protecting taxpayers and vulnerable Minnesotans.
How closely do you think the current governor, Tim Walz, is associated with that fraud? How much responsibility does he bear?
Oh, he owns it. Absolutely. I mean, there have been no agency people held accountable for the fraud on the front end. So if we could stop this with better internal controls and oversight by the agencies, then there would be fewer criminals out there bilking the taxpayer. So yes, the criminals need to be held accountable, and acting attorney and Joe Thompson and former U.S. attorney Andy Lugar, a Democrat, by the way, have done terrific work on holding the criminals accountable. But it starts in the agencies, and we have not been able to, no one's been fired, no one's even had a reprimand, and instead they just keep moving the deck chairs around over there, and we have got to stop it on the front end. The Office of Legislative Auditor has been putting out reports flagging the lack of internal controls in the Department of Human Services since 2007. So we have known there's been a problem, and he has not held the agencies accountable.
It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of if you look at it and compare that to the federal government. They have all these agencies, and stuff gets done and money gets spent through all these agencies that often just falls through the cracks. And before you know it, it's adding up to billions of dollars. The state has agencies as well. And it sounds like this is sort of a parallel. How do I have that right? You know, after nearly 30 years on the sidelines, doing the NFL, the Olympics, NBA, you name it, I've learned that real expertise comes from consistency, not guesswork. And that's why I'm excited to team up with Sports Corner Daily. Their free daily picks keep cashing with analysis so clear, even a casual fan can cash in. And with the NFL and college football and all the big matchups coming up right around the corner, this is the best time to get in on the action. My listeners get 2 expert picks delivered free every single day. Every single day, free. Just text the word BETS, B-E-T-S, to 844-759-0281 or visit sportsdailypick.com to sign up in seconds. No cost, no risk, just smart winning insight. Again, text the word BETS, B-E-T-S, to 844-759-0281 or go to sportsdailypick.com. Sign up. Don't wait. Kick off the season on the winning side. It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of if you look at it and compare that to the federal government. They have all these agencies. And stuff gets done and money gets spent through all these agencies that often just falls through the cracks. And before you know it, it's adding up to billions of dollars. The state has agencies as well. And it sounds like this is sort of a parallel. How do I have that right?
Yes. And unfortunately, we did pass some good bipartisan tools to strengthen oversight. We created a state level crime of kickbacks. We tightened up when specifically giving micromanagement and statute of when they can stop payment. But the reality is they have always had the ability to stop payment when there have been credible allegations of fraud. They've always had that, and they haven't used it. So this sort of Johnny-come-lately idea that, oh, now he has the tools to stop fraud because of some bills that were passed this session, the tools were always there. And they're currently not using the tools they have. So I've called for a federal audit of DHS, and I talked to some people in the federal government last week, and I said, what more can we be doing? And they said they currently could do prepayment authorizations on all these transactions to stop it before it goes out and make sure that I's are crossed and, I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and they're not using that tool. So there's much more that could be done that is not being done.
All right, so that's great work, and certainly Minnesota needs it. What differentiates you most from Tim Walz?
I would say, there's a host of reasons. On policy, I think we're 180 degrees on most policies. And then I would say energy. I am so excited to be in this race, and I love Minnesota, and I'm going to, be everywhere all the time. And I think just the fact that he's so undecisive about whether he's getting in the race is just a big contrast. And I think if someone doesn't really want this job, that's a sign that maybe he should step away. I'm not going to give him any political advice, but I think the contrast in our energy and our passion for the state is palpable.
Sort of makes you wonder if he's considering running for president, which would be amusing given how unsuccessful he was as a vice presidential candidate. But you sort of wonder what he's waiting for. But having said that, there are two other candidates that we know of right now running for the Republican nomination, Kendall Qualls and Dr. Scott Jensen. Kendall is big on public safety. Dr. Jensen became known during COVID for his arguments against lockdowns and so forth. So obviously you're a woman, you would be the first, but I don't like to focus so much on the identity. I really like to focus on the values and the politics. What differentiates you from those two gentlemen?
First of all, I know both of them, and I'm welcoming them in the race. Or I think we're going to have a great primary on the Republican side. So my candidacy isn't against either of them. My candidacy is about who can win the general election. We have not put up a candidate on the Republican side for governor who has been able to win a general since Tim Pawlenty back in 2006. That's the last time we won a governor's race. And so I just think that we need to put up someone who has the experience, who can go toe-to-toe with Governor Walz on policy. And my service has overlapped his service in the governor's office exactly. So I know about all the different bills, amendments, policies that have not served Minnesota well. So I'm happy to take that fight on. And then secondly, we need someone who's got a proven record of winning in the suburbs. And so in my district, the presidential race was virtually tied, and I won by 14 points. So my people know me. They know I'm going to fight hard for them. And so I feel like I can bring that message around the state where people really get to know me and support me. Regardless of their R or D behind their name, it's about they know I care about Minnesotans and I care about making sure Minnesota works for families and for our small businesses.
The last gubernatorial campaign, I think, was decided in large part because Scott Jensen made the error, and he and I have talked about this, of saying he was going to ban abortion. Now, we know that the abortion laws in Minnesota are very lax. This will come up because it's an issue that the Democrats, the DFL, as we call it here in Minnesota, like to use to drive a wedge between the voters. When you're asked about your stance, how do you answer these questions? This is, to me, often a major sticking point in Minnesota.
Yes, so I've answered it all the years I've been running, and I'm pro-life, and I want to work with people of goodwill on both sides to reduce the number of abortions. So I know people who are pro-choice and they'll say, I'm personally pro-life, but I don't want to end the right of abortion for other women. And I feel like there are a lot of places where we can come together, where we can reduce the number of abortions and support moms and support babies. And so I want to work on those issues where we find consensus and can help reduce the number of abortions.
So when you hear these pro-choice people, and I happen to be one of them, I am pro-life. My backstory on that is deep, but I do agree that we can't force women to take pregnancies to term if they don't want to. I also believe that, we should limit abortion to the first trimester. That's my particular point of view. There are other people who say hands off on all of it. Let the woman decide with her doctor what she wants to do and leave it at that, no limitations. So how, when you talk about consensus building and coming together, how would you characterize your understanding of what I just said about not limiting the rights of other women?
So I think we have to start from the position, that I am pro-life. I want to reduce the number of abortions, and I want to find ways to support women and babies through a pregnancy. But there are so many things that were legal under Roe in Minnesota that under Tim Walz and the Democrat trifecta, we got rid of. Under Roe, we used to have protections for babies born alive. That's gone. Under Roe, we used to provide support for pregnancy centers that support women and babies. That's gone. So there are things that we used to have consensus about that we no longer do. So they went to the far extreme.
Yeah.
And I think we can go back and say, all right, what are the things that were working that supported women and babies that we had consensus on? Let's start there. And then it's going to take, I think, Roe was in place for 50 years. It didn't happen overnight. We're going to have to continue to change hearts and minds and help people understand that there are options for women and babies, and work together to build consensus. It's a tough issue, but it's one that I think all Minnesotans care about. When I'm at the door talking to pro-choice people, they're compassionate. They want women to have support. And so I think if we focus on how do we support women, we will find ways to work together.
Let's move to the trans athletes in sports issues. Minnesota was sort of in the center of this over last spring with the softball championship and a biological boy pitching for the team that ended up winning the state championship. It was completely absurd, in my opinion. As much as I empathize for this person who feels that they, identify as a girl, there's a fairness issue here. And we established Title IX so that women could have their own division in sports, be empowered to be athletes. And there is a creep happening here. I'm very opinionated about this. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not. There is a creep that's happening, and people say, "Oh, it's so rare." I don't think it's as rare as people like you to believe it is. This is not a transphobic or anti-trans stance. This is a pro-girls, save women's sports stance. How would you address it if you were governor?
Oh, exactly. I'm for protecting girls' sports, and I'm for protecting girls in their bathrooms and their locker rooms. We have to make sure that girls are protected and have all the opportunities women in generations before me fought for under Title IX. So women and girls should have the right to play sports, to compete fairly, to have opportunities for championships and scholarships. And when we allow biological males to play in their sports, we are creating an unlevel playing field that harms girls. So we need to have biological boys in biological boys' sports, biological girls in their sports, and yes, there should be compassion for, young people who are struggling with gender dysphoria. I totally agree. But girls' sports should not be the place where that is figured out. We need to protect girls' sports, and we had a bill to protect girls' sports in the legislature this year. Every House Republican voted for it. Every Democrat voted against it. And because things fail it actually passed the House 67-66, but because you need 68 votes, it didn't pass. So we have strong support across the state for protecting girls' sports. So we'll go back and try and get that over the finish line. Right now, the State High School League is in opposition to the president's executive order on this issue. So they are defying the president's executive order to protect girls' sports, and I think that's not what Minnesota families want.
And Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, has said, we'll sue and we'll sue and we'll sue some more. These are kids. These are kids. He seems to be sympathetic only to the very small minority of kids who do identify as trans, and not to the girls whose opportunities are being stripped. And he is quite militant about it. What is your experience with Keith Ellison around this issue, and others, if you'd like to contribute those?
Yeah, I haven't worked directly with him on this issue. I've just seen his public statements, but clearly he is working against what Minnesota families and girls want and what's best for girls and women in our state. So that's unfortunate, and that he's using his position instead of protecting girls to work against them. And on other issues, that my main interaction with him has been on the fraud committee. He's come and testified a couple times about what his office has been doing. I have to say that they have some good investigators over there in the Medicaid fraud control unit, but in general, they have been too late to all these cases. There have been whistleblowers who have raised the red flag on fraud to DHS and to the Attorney General's office and not had any response or minimal response. And so he is also culpable for the fraud that's out there.
We just want accountability. I mean, that's a word that seems to be so out of vogue, and we aren't holding people accountable, which encourages other people to follow suit and do the same thing. It drives me nuts. I want to play a bit of sound for you. We recently here in Minneapolis had the Democratic summer camp, as people are calling it. Tim Walz threw a little tizzy, just went anti-Trump. Amy Klobuchar was there. But this woman, and they gave their land statement at the beginning, we're on stolen land, and it's just such a waste of time, it seems to me, and energy and focus. But we'll leave that to another time. The big issue for me is crime and public safety, which to me is the top line responsibility of any government, local, state, federal, is keeping the public safe. I want to roll for you this clip of someone who said, don't get distracted by this. Go ahead, Misty, and roll this.
Issues voters care about. Where does Trump go? Migrant crime, carjackings, the really lurid, awful stuff that is a crazy, crazy visual. Don't take the bait, because most Americans are more worried about how are we going to address mental health issues, the visible homelessness that we see on streets, and how do we deal with mental health and other issues that drive the sort of random incidents that scare all of us. That's what you should be talking about. That's where you should be focused. Don't take the bait in talking about migrant crime or carjackings or the things that actually don't matter to that many Americans. And then go to the...
Well, I didn't realize that migrant crime and carjackings didn't matter to most Americans. They matter to me.
I didn't know either, and they matter to my constituents. Oh my goodness, that's shocking.
I would imagine. Yeah, that message to the entire Democrat Party is astonishing to me. What do you hear from your constituents?
I mean, my constituents are very concerned about this. My constituents have experienced carjacking, have experienced crime, have really been impacted by this in serious ways. I have families in my district whose students have been carjacked at the University of Minnesota, or who are afraid to walk on campus at college. So it's a huge issue, and I just think it's honestly, sadly, I mean, it shows how out of touch the Democrats are, how tone deaf they are, that they think that the mental health crisis, which is real, is the main thing people are concerned about. No, people are concerned about whether they're safe in their homes, whether they can walk the streets, whether they can go to the state fair. I heard a story today about how people are concerned about whether it's safe at the state fair this year. Minnesotans want their lives back. They want public safety. They want communities to work. They want to feel like they can go out with their families, enjoy a nice evening, go to the Twins, the Vikings, whatever it's going to be, and not have to worry about where did they park the car? Are they back before dark? Are they going to be assaulted in the, walking back to their car? So I just feel like it just shows how tone deaf they are.
Mental health may be driving a lot of this, and it is, as you said, it is a crisis, but the end result is the vast majority of people don't feel, it's their public safety that they're concerned about. I join in that. Let's talk about education a little bit. This is another big one for me. I'm the daughter of a public school teacher, grew up in California, and saw that education system go into the toilet. And now Minnesota, which once boasted a phenomenal public education system, seems to not be able to get its kids to read at grade level or do math at grade level. Where to begin there, Kristin?
It's an absolute tragedy. Minnesota has been a leader nationally on education, and now we're below Mississippi. And Minnesotans expect good education. That's one of the reasons people come to Minnesota or used to. And it's terrible. It's criminal that 50% of our kids cannot read and do math at grade level statewide. And for Black students and Latino students, it's in the 70 percentiles. We are not preparing our students to be successful in the real world. And when students graduate without being able to read and do math, that leads to the disparities we are all concerned about later in life. Increased involvement with juvenile justice system, increased health disparities, increased economic disparities. So we are hurting our students, we are hurting our families, and we are hurting our ability to grow our economy, because without skilled workers, Minnesota is not going to be successful as a state. So it's the linchpin, and we have to fix it.
Where do you start?
We had a start on really the literacy piece by switching from whole language to the science of reading, which really, all the studies show, really makes a difference. But unfortunately, how they rolled it out just has not made sense. I had a bill for 6 years on doing this and following actually the Mississippi model, where you would bring teachers, pay for their time to do intensive training in science of learning over the summer so that they could implement it in their classrooms in the fall and have coaches in the schools to help them. It's expensive, but it's worth it. And instead, what they're doing is they're dribbling it out. So teachers are getting professional development training maybe once a month or every other month over 3 years to learn the new curriculum. So we're losing grade after grade of kids because they're not actually implementing the science of learning in a cohesive strategy. And so doing science of learning matters, science of reading matters, but how they're rolling it out is terrible. And so we would fix that. We would put a laser focus on it in the Robbins administration, and we will help our kids get focused. We will also stop all the woke ideology in schools. Schools need to focus on achievement. Math, reading, science, we got to get back to the basics. That's what parents expect. They don't want our kids indoctrinated. And so we have to empower teachers. I love that your mom was a school teacher. Teachers have reached out to me so many times. We have taken away the tools that teachers use to control their classrooms. They can no longer send kids to the principal. They can no longer withhold recess. Now, honestly, Michelle, I didn't believe this was a thing, so I called some teachers in my area to ask what is going on. If a student is acting out, having a tantrum in the classroom, out of control, instead of removing that student and going to the principal's office, which is how we all grew up, they take the students who are well-behaved out of the classroom and they send a social worker or a counselor in to deal with the student who's out of control in the classroom. So all the learning is disrupted. All the good students are removed. Not good, but, untroubled students are removed. And the troubled student is able to throw things, have a fit, whatever. I mean, it just defies common sense. This is why kids can't learn, because we are not being the adults, controlling the classroom with basic fundamental compassion that will keep kids on task. So there's a lot we can do to empower teachers, to help them get control of their classrooms, to give schools the flexibility they need for funding. We put historic money into schools, the most in state history 2 years ago, and school budgets are worse off because we had so many unfunded mandates. Schools are begging us to take off these unfunded mandates and let them decide how to spend the money.
What's an example of an unfunded mandate? I'm not familiar.
Oh my word, I have so many. So one of them is the new law that requires students to provide, or schools to provide, unemployment insurance. It's a huge budget buster for schools. So all along we've had 9-month contract employees for school buses, lunchroom, people, janitorial services, whatever. And everyone knows it's a 9-month contract. And then they come back, they either work over the summer for summer school or they come back in the fall and they get the summer off. It's been that way for decades. And now it's now considered unemployment. So the schools have to fund unemployment for the contract workers. They were never full-time workers. And this is killing school budgets. And schools are begging us to give them relief on this. And also it's hurt summer school programs because now nobody wants to work in the summer because we're paying them to take the summer off on unemployment. So they don't have adequate bus drivers or chaperones or classroom attendants in the summer school programs anymore. So it's been a debacle, and Minnesotans are paying for it. And the schools, it's going to drive up property taxes for families. It's completely unnecessary. And there was many other unfunded mandates.
You know what? That's this stuff. That's amazing. And I don't think enough people know those things.
No, they don't. No.
It's because I had not heard that. And that's, it all just seems to be examples of this overarching sense that, for instance, if you're a criminal and you're caught, my son had his car stolen from high school here in Minnesota, and they were able to find it. They arrested the guy who stole it, but they looked at my son and my husband as they returned the car to them and said, he's going to be out on the street within a matter of hours. So, whatever, but there's your car back. Okay. So it's this like turnstile. And it seems to me that you've got this lack of accountability on so many levels, from the crime level to the school level, to the agency level. And it's just empowering so much. It's empowering and enabling fraud and abuse at levels that I don't think people really understand. And as you said, driving up property taxes, which then drives up the cost of living for families.
Exactly. No, and the crime, you're exactly right. So I do ride-alongs in my district with all the different police that serve my district, and Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and it's an absolutely revolving door, especially on the retail crime. And people know, like, the word is out. If you are a juvenile, they will not prosecute you in Hennepin County because of Mary Moriarty. So these older people run juveniles to go grab the stuff. Literally, yeah. I was on a ride-along, and they knew that the juveniles were in the store. They knew what their getaway car was, and they knew that if they got to the car, they would get away, and they did. And the police have told me, like, they're so discouraged. Some of the juveniles will be like, yep, see you tomorrow. Like, they know they get away with it. It's terrible, and it's so unnecessary.
It's so unnecessary. It's like, it would
stop.
It's amazing. Kristin, I want to finish with your economic background, because I know you've been really driven by a desire and a focus to see Minnesota's economy grow, and not just for some people. See, this is the thing that drives me nuts as well. Again, I'm changing from a journalist to just a concerned voter here. Okay. This notion that everything that's being trimmed or cut in government is to benefit billionaires. I get emails from people who say that, well, how can you support this president when all he does is cut spending to support his billionaire Mar-a-Lago friends? Okay, whatever. I certainly haven't interpreted it that way. So when we talk about economic growth, this is, to me, it's for everyone. How would you sort of describe what your economic point of view, perspective, and approach is, and how it would be if you were the governor?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. This has been my wheelhouse for a long time. Before I ran for office, I ran a group called the Economic Club of Minnesota. We were focused on Minnesota's competitiveness, and compared to our surrounding states and other states nationally, Minnesota is uncompetitive in every measure of taxation, whether it's corporate, individual, pensions, real estate taxes. On any front, we are not competitive. And so we are driving people out of this state. As we all know, so many people have taken their businesses out of state, have taken their retirement out of state, and with that flees skills, flees workers, flees leadership. And so we have to change the incentives so that instead we're drawing people in. We need to attract talent, we need to attract investment, and that will grow the economy. And as we grow the economy, that will provide the resources we need to fund the things that we want to prioritize. So what happened under Tim Walz, I mean, the math is terrible. We had an $18 billion surplus, and then he raised taxes $11 billion and left us with a $6 billion deficit. Like, the math is unsustainable. We are a state of 6 million people, and not that maybe half of them pay taxes. They grew the state budget in 2 years from 52 billion to 72 billion. Like, a 40% increase in state government in 2 years is completely unsustainable. So we have to stop growing government. We have to make sure that we're incentivizing new people and new investment to come to the state. And as we grow the economy, then government can do the things that we need to do. We need to provide public safety. We need to provide good roads. We need to provide a strong education system. But we cannot do everything. And instead, under the Democrats, they've been crowding out the private sector where jobs are created, which, provides opportunities and stability and community. All those things, we're driving people out instead of incentivizing people to come and build their companies here, build their lives here. That's what we need. We need more families, more communities, more job creators in our state.
I'll tell you a quick anecdote. I was speaking at the Steamboat Institute over the weekend out in Colorado, and I asked if there were any other Minnesotans in the crowd, and a couple people raised their hand, and I said, "Oh, where are you from?" They said, "Well, we left." And I went to the other guy and I said, "Okay, what about you?" And he said, "Well, we left." I know so many people who are leaving, and it is sad. Kristin, when I moved here 30 years ago, and I spent the first half of my life in California, and it's been tragic to see what's gone on there. Now here, half my life, it's changed so much. It's so awfully sad. I remember coming here and thinking, what a clean downtown. What a safe feeling I have everywhere that I go. I loved being a Minnesotan, but it's absolutely tragic what Tim Walz has done to this state.
I know, and that's why I'm running, because I love Minnesota. I'm originally from Crookston. I'm a Minnesotan through and through, and we are going to be able to turn this state around. Minnesotans are with us. When I'm out talking to people, I don't know if they're Republican or Democrat, but they all want the same things, right? They want good schools, they want to afford their lives and have something left over, and they want safe communities. And we can get there again. We have the raw materials, we have the great people. We just need to have the right policies to incentivize low crime, hold people accountable, stop all the outflow of Minnesotans and wealth from our state, and bring it back and use that talent to create jobs and build our state. We can do it. I'm excited.
It's great of you to spend time with us. I'm going to be watching this race with great interest, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk again, or even do a town hall with all three candidates, or we'll see how this shakes out. It's coming up. Yes. Kristin, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me call you Kristin and drop the honorifics and all the rest.
Oh my word! Of course, I'm a mom. I'm a Minnesotan. We're just trying to do right by our families and our state. So, but people should go to KristinRobbinsForGovernor.com. Check it out.
Thank you. She is Kristin Robbins. She is running for governor. It takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage and a lot of good intention to run for public office. So I always end my podcast, Kristin, by saying be brave and do good, and you are doing both, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. And I'm sorry about the noise. My street is being torn up. Heavens.
It's that season in Minnesota. It's either winter or construction, one or the other.
Thank
you, Kristin. Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.